Hey Goobers, and welcome back to class. Today we are going to be learning about different types of angles and where we can find them in real life. So we first want to start off with identifying the names of angles. So the first one, and probably one of the most important ones to remember, is the right angle. So the most important thing to remember about the right angle is that it is exactly 90 degrees. And it forms a perfect angle that we see in a lot of different places. So this is going to be seen at like the corner of your paper. It can be seen in houses, things like that. So a 90-degree angle is when a line is perfectly lined up straight and perpendicular to the baseline. And we can always tell if it's a right angle because of this square symbol here. Because if you remember, rectangles and squares all have 4 angles that are 90 degrees. So we use a square to represent that 90-degree angle. Our next one is this one here. As you can see, it is smaller than 90 degrees. So we call it an acute angle. Just because it's small, so it's acute. So it is less than 90 degrees. So if you measure it out, it's going to be smaller than 90 degrees. It can be 89 degrees, it can be 3 degrees, anywhere between 1 degree and 89 degrees is an acute angle. So this next one, as we can see, it is large. It has a very open mouth. And it is called an obtuse angle. And it is more than 90 degrees. So it can be any size as long as it is more than 90 degrees. So I'm talking about degrees and all these fancy terms for them. So to be able to know the degrees of an angle, we have this really fancy tool down here. It is called a protractor. In using it, you can measure an angle. So if we had an angle that looked like this, we could use this protractor to see that it is 70 degrees. And it can be a little tricky to use, mostly because of knowing whether you're going to be using the top or the bottom. So if the bottom or the base of the angle is pointing this way, you're going to use the outer numbers here. But if the base angle of the angle here is pointing this way to the right, you're going to use these inner numbers. So again, it can be a little tricky in using and remembering, but you'll go over that later on in when you're in person in class or later on. Usually as you go up in grades, we tend to review it every single time. So now we're going to talk about angles in life. So I want you to look at these 2 images here. We can see that we have a pizza and a fan. And both of them create angles. We can think of the bottom of the pizza right here as an angle. And we can think of this fan here and the piece where everything flares out as another angle. So if we look at those 2 shapes and those 2 angles, we have to decide whether or not they are a right, obtuse, or acute angles. Now looking at images like these, sometimes they can be a little tricky. So what I like to do is take a spare piece of paper, whether it is scrap or a sticky note, and I like to hold it up to the angle using one of the lines as its base because paper, if their corners haven't been torn off or anything, they have a 90-degree angle. So you can use that as your right angle to see. And if you hold it up to this pizza, we can see that it is smaller than a right angle. So this angle here is an acute angle. And again, we want to do the same thing with the fan, where we hold up our piece of paper and we line it up with one of the lines, that bottom one there, and we can see that it is bigger than that 90 degrees. So this is an obtuse angle. And I'm sure y'all just looking at this can tell that there are many different angles on these shapes, and if you want, you can totally stop and look at them and hold up your paper and try to see where else you can find angles. I think I found one right here that when I hold up my paper, it looks like a 90-degree angle. So this one here is a right angle. So even though we have an object with an obtuse angle, we can also have an object that has multiple different kinds of angles in it. So let's go down, and I want y'all to pause the video here, and I want y'all to try this one out. There are many different angles here, so I want y'all to decide which ones you think are obtuse, right, and acute. And I want you to label how many you think there are. So you're going to put how many acute there are, how many right, and how many obtuse there are in this image. So go ahead and pause this video now so you can go through and try finding all the angles you can. So if you've hit play, I'm assuming that you've done your very best to find all the angles we can see in this image. So I want to go over this with you, and you can surely follow along with me and see how many you think we found total. So I'm going to use different colors for each of these. So I'm going to use blue for acute. I want to use green for right. And I'm going to use this pink purple for obtuse. So everywhere in this image we see an angle, we're going to use these colors to decide which is what. So I have my trusty piece of paper here with me, and I'm going to line it up, and we're going to start with this first angle here. When I hold it up and I use my piece of paper, I can see that is a right angle. So I'm going to highlight this angle in green. Just like that. So you know we already got one. So I'm going to go straight across that first one. That is also a right angle. And seeing that is also a right angle. And I think we can see a pattern of these angles right across the top here are all going to be right angles. So this is one. That's one. Here's one. And straight down the line. So, now we're going to move on to the second half of the shape. I'm looking at this big giant angle here. I can tell just by looking that it's an obtuse angle, but we want to try it out just in case. So I'm holding up my piece of paper, and it is definitely way more than 90 degrees. So we're going to say that this one right here is obtuse. And the one right beside it, that one's very tiny. So we're going to say that one's an acute one. And we're going to keep going. So that one beside that, acute one, in that same shape there is obtuse. So we're going to highlight that one. And we can see that this shape here and this shape are the exact same. So we don't have to really measure them. We can just go ahead and put down and shade them accordingly. And the same thing with this. We can see that that angle matches up with the other two. So those are all back and forth, acute, obtuse, and acute. So that leaves us with these two angles down here. This one here, and this one. So when you hold up our piece of paper to that first one, we can see it's more than 90 degrees, so that is an obtuse. And we can hold up our piece of paper to this one and can see that it is acute. So if y'all see any patterns here, because there is some patterns, I want y'all to leave a comment below and let me know what patterns you see. We're going to go ahead and we're going to count up how many we have. So how many blue angles do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this image, there are 4 acute angles. So let's go to the right ones. There are many of these. So if we count up all the green shaded angles, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 right angles. So now we're going to go to obtuse and we're going to count up how many of those we see. See 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in this shape and image, we see 4 obtuse angles, 4 acute, and 12 right. So again, if you see a pattern here, make sure you leave a comment below and let me know what the pattern you see is with all of these angles. But I will see y'all next time when we cover complementary angles. Bye!